Gene Simmons has always been more than just the bassist of Kiss. He's been a larger-than-life figure whose every move sparks attention. From shocking career decisions to bold public stunts, he's built a reputation for leaving people stunned. But what was just released about him has everyone talking, and it's not what fans expected. Join us as we break down the full story and uncover why Gene Simmons has once again left the world speechless. Haunted origins. Gene Simmons, born Chaim Witz on August 25, 1949, began life in a world shaped by pain and survival. His mother, Flora Klein, had endured the unimaginable. Born in Hungary in 1925, she was just a teenager when she was forced into labor camps during World War II. She picked potatoes under the watch of soldiers with guns and saw many of her relatives disappear, including her own mother, who perished in a gas chamber. When the war ended, Flora was only 20 years old, but she carried scars that would stay with her forever. She rarely spoke about what happened, but her silence, her protectiveness, and the sudden tears she sometimes shed told her son more than words ever could. After the war, Flora married another Hungarian survivor, Yehiel Witz, in 1946. Together, they tried to rebuild their lives. They moved to Israel in 1947, just before the country was officially born. 2 years later, their son Chaim arrived. Life in Haifa was not easy. The family had little money, and by the time Chaim was 6, his parents' marriage had fallen apart. His father stayed behind in Israel and remarried, while Flora struggled alone to raise him. Those years were marked by poverty and hunger. Flora worked in factories, sewing buttons to make a living, often coming home late at night, exhausted. Dinner was sometimes nothing more than bread and milk. To help, young Chaim tried to earn a few coins by picking wild fruit and selling it on the roadside. When the winters grew cold, he made his first coat from an old army blanket. He grew up fast, learning the value of hard work and determination. Despite the struggles, Chaim showed an incredible ability with languages. By the time he was 7, he already spoke Hebrew, Hungarian, and Turkish. When he discovered American comic books, he became fascinated with English and began teaching himself just to understand the stories of heroes like Superman and Spider-Man. In 1957, Flora made a life-changing decision. She and her 8-year-old son left Israel and moved to Queens, New York, with almost nothing. The adjustment was difficult. The strange new world of TV dinners, unfamiliar schools, and constant bullying for his accent made Chaim feel like an outsider once again. To fit in, he changed his name to Eugene Klein and began the process of reinventing himself in America. And soon, that reinvention would take him far beyond what anyone expected. The hungry dreamer. Life in New York was not simple for young Chaim, now known as Eugene. He spoke several languages, but his thick accent made him stand out in school. Other kids teased him and made him feel like he didn't belong. He was caught between two worlds. At home, he was still the boy from Israel, with a hard-working mother who barely had time to rest. And outside, he was trying to figure out what it meant to be American. That feeling of being different stayed with him, but it also pushed him to try harder. To support himself and help his mother, Eugene worked many small jobs. He sold cactuses door to door, just to make a few extra dollars. He picked fruit again, the same way he had back in Israel. He even worked in local factories when he was old enough, standing behind counters and learning how to deal with people face to face. None of these jobs paid much, but he learned how to hustle, save every cent, and push forward. Those early struggles taught him discipline that would never leave him. Even with the challenges of daily life, Eugene found something that gave him hope: American pop culture. He loved comic books, especially Superman and Spider-Man. These characters represented strength, courage, and the idea that someone ordinary could become extraordinary. He also became obsessed with television. He watched variety shows and live performances, studying the stars who captured the attention of millions. The turning point came in 1964, when the Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. Seeing the screaming crowds and the power of music lit a fire inside him. He decided he wanted that kind of life: fame, respect, and a stage where no one could ignore him. And soon, Gene Simmons would discover the stage where his dream could finally come alive. First bands and first failures. By the late 1960s, Gene Simmons was still figuring out where he fit in. He studied education at Sullivan County Community College and even worked as a substitute teacher in Spanish Harlem after earning his associate degree. He taught 6th graders for a short time, earning just $75 a week. While he was good at teaching, his heart wasn't in the classroom. What he really wanted was music. Gene had been practicing guitar for years, and by now his dream of standing on stage felt stronger than ever. In 1968, he joined forces with Paul Stanley, another young musician with big ambitions. Together, they formed a band called Rainbow. It didn't last long, but it gave them a starting point. Soon, Rainbow evolved into a new group called Wicked Lester in 1970. The band included Steve Coronel, Brooke Ostrander, and Tony Zarella. Their sound was a mix of folk and rock, reflecting the unpredictable music scene in New York at the time. Gene and Paul poured themselves into the project, believing this was their shot at something big. By 1972, Wicked Lester had recorded a full album at Electric Lady Studios, a place built by Jimi Hendrix. Epic Records paid for the sessions, and the band thought they were about to break through. But when the album was finished, everything collapsed. Don Ellis, the A&R director at Epic, hated the record. He thought the songs were messy, the style unfocused, and completely wrong for radio. Instead of being released, the album was shelved. Gene was crushed. He had worked so hard, and now his dream seemed like it was slipping away before it even started. The rejection fueled Gene's determination. Years later, after Kiss became famous, he and Paul bought back the Wicked Lester master tapes for $138,000 just to make sure they would never be released. They didn't want their polished rock image tied to that failed experiment. And in 1973, that idea would explode into the world as Kiss. Birth of the Demon. By 1973, Gene Simmons and his bandmates were ready to try something completely different. Music alone wasn't enough anymore. They wanted to stand out in a crowded rock scene, and Gene was determined to create a character that nobody could forget. Inspired by horror films, comic book villains, and the dark energy of shock rock pioneer Alice Cooper, he painted his face with black bat wings around his eyes. He spit fake blood, breathed fire, and moved like a monster on stage. This was the birth of the demon, the larger-than-life persona that would define him for the rest of his career. Their very first performance as Kiss took place on January 30th, 1973, at a small club in Queens called the Coventry. Only 3 people showed up, some of them girlfriends of the band, but the energy was still unforgettable. That night, Gene breathed fire on stage for the first time. And though the crowd was tiny, the spectacle set the tone for what Kiss would become. As they continued performing, word started to spread about the strange new band with outrageous makeup and wild stage tricks. In August 1973, Kiss played at the Hotel Diplomat in New York. In the audience that night was Bill Aucoin, a television director turned manager. He was blown away by their dedication and confidence. Aucoin promised he could land them a record deal within 2 weeks if they agreed to work with him. True to his word, he delivered. By November, Kiss had signed with Casablanca Records, a new label founded by Neil Bogart. The band quickly recorded their debut album, released in February 1974. Sales were slow at first, but Kiss refused to give up. Instead of waiting for radio hits, they hit the road. In 1974 alone, they played more than 300 shows, building their fan base one concert at a time. Their live performances became their biggest weapon, loud, chaotic, and impossible to ignore. Everything changed on September 10, 1975, with the release of their live album, Alive. It captured the raw energy of their shows and proved that Kiss was more than just a gimmick. The record went quadruple platinum, selling over 4 million copies, and saved both the band and Casablanca Records from collapse. And with that success, Gene Simmons and Kiss were no longer just a curiosity. They were about to become legends. Sex, Polaroids, and infamy. While Gene Simmons was building his career as the demon on stage, his personal life became just as infamous. Unlike many other rock stars of the 1970s, Simmons often said he never touched drugs or alcohol. He avoided the typical excesses that ruined so many musicians, but he poured his energy into something else: women. Over the years, Simmons claimed that he had been with more than 4,600 women, and in interviews, he sometimes pushed that number to nearly 5,000. What made this claim even more shocking was the way he kept track. Simmons developed a habit of photographing his sexual encounters with Polaroid cameras. Each woman was asked to hold up the hotel key in the picture, as if it was proof of their meeting. He collected these images and stored them in a private box. To him, it was a personal record of his conquests, but to others, it seemed disturbing and even obsessive. His collection became something of a dark legend in rock circles. Some friends who saw the photos were disgusted. Grace Slick, the singer from Jefferson Airplane, openly criticized him for it. She thought it was degrading and unnecessary. For Simmons, though, it was all part of the larger-than-life image he was creating. The demon wasn't just about fire, blood, and makeup. It was about power, dominance, and sex. Years later, when Simmons finally settled down with longtime partner Shannon Tweed, the photographs resurfaced. After they married in 2011, Shannon discovered the stash and reacted in a way that shocked fans. On their reality show, she burned the entire collection on camera, putting an end to that chapter of his life. Simmons admitted that losing the photos stung, but it was also a turning point. It showed that the wild lifestyle he had lived for decades could not last forever. And soon, as Kiss grew bigger, the line between his personal chaos and public fame would blur even more. The rise and the cracks. By 1976, Kiss had reached a new level of fame, and their next step was to prove they could create more than just loud live shows. That year, they released Destroyer, produced by Bob Ezrin, who was known for his work with Alice Cooper. Ezrin pushed the band out of their comfort zone. He added choirs, strings, sound effects, and polished arrangements. Songs were reworked, rewritten, and tightened. One track, Detroit Rock City, even borrowed ideas from classical music to give it more weight and drama. Another, God of Thunder, became Simmons' signature anthem. With its dark tone and eerie children's voices, it gave his demon character a permanent place as the darker heart of the band. Destroyer sold millions of copies, proving that Kiss could succeed both on stage and in the studio. Their shows grew bigger than ever. By the late 1970s, Kiss concerts were not just performances, they were full-scale spectacles. Gene Simmons flew across the stage on wires, spitting blood and fire. Ace Frehley's guitar shot rockets, pyrotechnics, and smoke-filled arenas. The band wanted to give fans an experience no one else could match. Crowds came in huge numbers, and the band was playing to stadiums filled with tens of thousands of fans. But success began to reveal cracks. In 1979, the band launched the Dynasty Tour, which ran for 6 months across North America. While it was one of their most ambitious tours, it showed signs of trouble. Ticket sales in some cities were weaker than expected, and the band started to attract a different crowd. Families and younger kids were showing up, replacing some of the hardcore rock fans. Inside the group, things were also falling apart. Drummer Peter Criss was struggling with drug use, and his behavior became more erratic. He sometimes stopped playing mid-show, leaving the rest of the band frustrated. And soon, the band would face a decision that would shock their fans around the world: unmasking the band. By the early 1980s, Kiss was starting to lose momentum. The makeup and theatrics that once made them stand out now seemed to weigh them down. Fans were moving on, and album sales were slipping. On September 18, 1983, the band made a bold move that shocked the rock world. During a live appearance on MTV, Kiss took off their makeup for the very first time. For 10 years, their true faces had been hidden behind black and white designs. But now the world saw Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and the rest of the group as themselves. It was risky, but it worked. Just as the unmasking was revealed, Kiss released a new album, Lick It Up. The heavier, rawer sound was a contrast to some of their earlier material, and the gamble paid off. The album went platinum, selling over 1 million copies, and gave the band a second life. Fans were interested again, proving that Kiss could survive without the gimmick that first made them famous. Gene Simmons, however, began to explore other opportunities outside the band. In 1984, he appeared in the science fiction thriller Runaway, playing the villain Luther. It was his first major acting role, and he leaned into his dark demon persona to bring the character to life. While Simmons enjoyed his Hollywood detour, his bandmates didn't share his excitement. They felt that his focus on movies and acting was pulling him away from Kiss at a time when they needed his full attention. The tension within the group started to grow. Despite the internal issues, the band kept pushing forward. In 1989, they released Hot in the Shade, an album that surprised fans with the ballad Forever. Unlike the heavy rock tracks Kiss was known for, this softer emotional song climbed the charts and became one of their biggest hits of the no-makeup era, reaching number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. Still, not everyone was happy with the direction, and some longtime fans felt confused by the change in style. Tragedy struck in 1991 when drummer Eric Carr, who had replaced Peter Criss a decade earlier, died of cancer. His passing left the band devastated. For Gene Simmons, it was another reminder of how easily things could fall apart, but his reputation during this time wasn't spotless. Many saw him as distracted, chasing fame in Hollywood while the band's foundation grew weaker. And just as Kiss was trying to hold everything together, the 1990s would bring another twist that nobody could have predicted. Scandals, women, and betrayals. Gene Simmons' personal life during the late 1970s and early 1980s was as loud as his performances on stage. While other musicians fell into drugs and alcohol, Simmons leaned on fame, women, and attention. His reputation as a womanizer was already well known, but one scandal stood out and became one of the most talked about betrayals in rock history. In 1979, Simmons began dating Cher, one of the biggest celebrities in the world at the time. The relationship shocked many fans, but it quickly became serious. Cher even said that she trusted him completely and felt secure in the relationship. But while they were together, Simmons became close to her best friend, Diana Ross. What started as a friendship grew into something more, and Simmons eventually left Cher for Ross. The betrayal made headlines and was featured in People magazine, sparking a media frenzy. Fans and critics alike called him out for the scandal, and Cher never forgave him. For Simmons, the attention only added to his image as someone who lived by his own rules, but it left permanent wounds in his personal relationships. While his private life was making headlines, his behavior within KISS was creating more problems. By the 1980s, Simmons' focus began drifting away from the band. He skipped rehearsals, missed studio sessions, and sometimes put his own interests above the group's needs. Hollywood projects, endless affairs, and his growing ego often took priority. This frustrated his bandmates, who felt abandoned at critical moments. Paul Stanley, in particular, shouldered much of the responsibility for keeping Kiss together, while Simmons seemed more concerned with his own image and pursuits. These distractions weakened the band at a time when they needed unity the most. Their sound was changing, their fan base was shifting, and the constant pressure to stay relevant was taking a toll. Simmons' absence and indulgence only added to the chaos. The band didn't collapse entirely, but it came dangerously close. For a group that had once built itself on discipline, spectacle, and relentless drive, the cracks were becoming hard to ignore. And just when it seemed like Kiss might not survive, Simmons found new ways to turn the chaos into money, building a business empire that would surprise everyone. The money machine and shameless branding. If Gene Simmons is known for anything outside of music, it's his obsession with turning Kiss into a brand. From the start, Simmons believed that Kiss was more than just a rock band. It was a business. Over the decades, he turned that belief into reality by creating a merchandise empire unlike anything seen before in music. By the 2000s, the Kiss logo had appeared on more than 5,000 licensed products. Fans could buy everything from action figures and lunchboxes to pinball machines, condoms, and even coffins. For Simmons, no product was too unusual if it carried the KISS name. The strategy worked. The band's merchandise and licensing deals have grossed over $1 billion in combined sales, making Kiss one of the most profitable acts in music history. Simmons also became infamous for pushing the limits when it came to ownership and control. In 2017, he tried to trademark the famous devil horns hand gesture, claiming he invented it during Kiss concerts in 1974. The gesture, with the index and pinky fingers raised, was already widely known in the rock and metal community and had been used by many artists, including Ronnie James Dio. Fans and musicians reacted with outrage, accusing Simmons of trying to take credit for something that didn't belong to him. The backlash was so strong that Simmons withdrew the trademark attempt just days later, but the move left a lasting mark on his reputation as someone willing to claim anything for himself if he thought it could be profitable. Beyond the stage and merchandise, Simmons threw himself into business ventures. In 2012, he and Paul Stanley launched Rock and Brews, a restaurant chain mixing classic rock themes with casual dining. It quickly expanded into multiple locations across the United States. Simmons also released The Vault in 2017, a massive box set of rare recordings priced at $2,000 each, which came with personal meet and greets for fans. He entered the cannabis industry in 2018 as the Chief Evangelist Officer for Invictus MD, and he even co-owned the LAKISS, an arena football team launched in 2013. While the team folded after just a few seasons, it showed how far Simmons was willing to stretch the Kiss brand into new territories. For Simmons, the music was only part of the story. The real prize was building an empire. And next, he would take his family life and put it right in front of the cameras for the world to see. Reality TV and family exposed. In 2006, Gene Simmons took his private life into the public eye with the launch of Gene Simmons' Family Jewels on A&E. The reality series ran for 7 seasons and gave fans a closer look at the man behind the demon persona. Instead of fire-breathing performances and wild concerts, the show focused on his life at home with longtime partner Shannon Tweed and their 2 children, Nick and Sophie. For viewers, it was a surprising shift. Simmons had always presented himself as a larger-than-life rock star, but here he was in a family setting, navigating the everyday challenges of relationships, parenting, and fame. The show quickly became a success. Audiences were curious about how someone with Simmons' reputation for excess could balance family life. Episodes often showed a lighter, more humorous side of him, while Shannon and the kids offered moments of honesty that grounded the series. Still, the shadows of Simmons' past were never far away. His history of infidelity and womanizing often came up as points of conflict on the show. Shannon, who had been with him since 1983, struggled with his unwillingness to commit fully after decades together. Their tension became one of the show's biggest storylines, keeping viewers invested season after season. The turning point came in 2011. After 28 years of avoiding marriage, Simmons finally proposed to Shannon. The moment was emotional, not just for them, but for the millions of fans who had followed their ups and downs on screen. On October 1, 2011, they were married in a televised ceremony, with their children playing important roles in the wedding. It was a milestone many thought would never happen, given Simmons' long resistance to commitment. Another unforgettable moment from the series came when Shannon discovered Simmons' infamous collection of Polaroids, photographs of his past encounters with women. In a dramatic on-air scene, she burned them, putting an end to that chapter of his life. The act symbolized a new beginning for their relationship and showed that Simmons was willing to leave behind his reckless past for the sake of his family. By the time the show ended in 2012, Family Jewels had run for 167 episodes, cementing itself as one of A&E's most popular programs. It gave fans a raw look at Simmons as more than just a rock star, and soon after, Simmons would face a loss that cut far deeper than any scandal or headline ever could. Loss and humanity exposed. For most of his career, Gene Simmons presented himself as tough, untouchable and larger than life. But in December 2018, fans saw a very different side of him. His mother, Flora Klein, passed away at the age of 93. Flora was more than just his mother. She was the foundation of his life and the person who shaped his values. A Holocaust survivor, she had endured unthinkable hardships as a teenager in Nazi labor camps before moving to Israel and later raising Gene on her own in New York. Simmons often said that everything he achieved came from her strength and sacrifice. When Flora died, Simmons's public tribute revealed just how deeply he loved and admired her. On social media, he described her as his moral compass and urged others to cherish their mothers while they still could. For someone known for his bravado, business talk, and rock star arrogance, this was one of the few times fans saw him completely stripped down and vulnerable. His grief was raw and real. His wife, Shannon Tweed, shared her own words of love for Flora, calling her the best grandmother anyone could ask for. Bandmate Paul Stanley also honored her memory, describing Flora as fiercely loving and devoted. The moment allowed the world to see Gene not as the demon, but simply as a son mourning the most important figure in his life. And as the years moved forward, Gene's own words and actions would once again stir controversy in ways that kept him in the spotlight. Recent controversies and cash grabs. Even after decades in the spotlight, Gene Simmons continued to make headlines, often for reasons that had little to do with music. In October 2024, he appeared as a guest on Dancing with the Stars. What should have been a lighthearted appearance quickly turned into a storm of criticism. Instead of focusing on the dancers' performances, Simmons made repeated comments about how attractive the female contestants looked. Just a few months later, in April 2025, Simmons made headlines again, this time for a fan experience that many considered over the top. He announced a roadie for a day package priced at $12,495, not including the concert ticket. Fans who purchased it would get to shadow him for a day, help with sound check, eat backstage meals, and even be introduced on stage. Each package also included a signed bass guitar as a souvenir. The reaction was immediate and harsh. Critics called it shameless, pointing out that asking fans to pay such a huge amount during tough economic times was tone-deaf. Online debates compared it to celebrity greed at its worst. Yet, in true Simmons fashion, the controversy didn't stop the money from rolling in. Despite the outrage, the package sold out. One fan, a retired soldier, even told reporters that the experience was worth every dollar. The mixed reactions once again proved Simmons' unique place in pop culture as someone who could draw both anger and admiration at the same time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss more stories like this.